expected, but we're going to go live here on YouTube as well. So welcome everybody to today's video. This is part 3 of a 4-part series on trauma inside of the vagus nerve. Today we're going to be covering a little bit about psychedelics, answering some of the questions that have come up over the last few days because of the series, which have been really interesting. Taking new questions, and as well looking at some aspects of where is trauma therapy working. We're going to talk about some of the places where it is working successfully. But before we do that, we are going to do our famous, world famous, most incredible thing called the simultaneous squeeze. So if this is the only thing you come and join me for, your life is going to tangibly improve. So what it is we're going to take a deep breath in. You're going to hold it at the top. You can also take a sip of air at the very top. Another little sip. And then you're going to hold that air in and then squeeze it deep, squeeze it hard. And then it's going to cause a rush of blood to your head and a release of acetylcholine into your brain, release of acetylcholine into your vagus nerve, and it's going to immediately calm you down. It's going to make you feel really, really good. So here we go. The simultaneous squeeze starts now in 3, 2, 1. Breathe in. A little sip at the top. Hold it. Squeeze. And slowly exhale. And return to normal. Honestly, feels so good. Feels so good. How have doctors not made this a standard thing? Like when they walk in, they're like, okay, Sterling, before we go over everything, I just want us to both take a moment and just do a quick Valsalva squeeze. How about that? Wouldn't that feel amazing? I mean, I think that would be just the most special way to start off any meeting in any way, shape, or form. So maybe you can incorporate that somehow in your life. Be like, hey, I learned this cool trick. It'll help us all get on the same page. We're relaxed, we're resourced, we're feeling good. We can all just take a little quick deep breath and kind of squeeze a little bit, right? And it could feel really amazing. I could see a lot of conversations that I've had that kind of went sideways probably had gone a lot better had I started them off with that practice. Thank you, Lori. Yes, I think that they should probably. I think if they did, things would be pretty darn good. But I digress. Anyway, speaking of doctors, speaking of therapy, today the topic of concern is part 3 of this 4-part series on trauma. Now, I've been getting some really good feedback. A lot of you are telling me that I'm certainly onto something. And this is from I would use this in the most loving way possible, but a patient population that I know knows what they're talking about. So, I certainly have my own traumatic experiences that I've dealt with in my life, but certainly I know that some of the people who have, been engaging in the chat throughout these videos, I won't name any names, are actually knowledgeable. Some of the private messages I've received from people validating like, hey, I think you're onto something. And some of the responses on my larger Facebook page have also been getting equal parts good feedback, let's say. That there's a kernel of truth in what I'm saying, which I think is great. I think it's important. It's not for my ego to feel like, oh, I'm right, because I don't really care about being right here in that sense. It's not just so I can be, I'm right, because who's right after all, right? Everybody can be right if we really argue for it. But what matters, I think, is connection, is helping people. That's the name of the game here. It's not for me to go, I'm right, you're wrong, XYZ. So in the spirit of not being right just to disconnect with people, we will talk about where there are successes that do involve trauma-informed things. We're going to talk a little bit about Bessel van der Kolk over in the Netherlands and Peter Levine, Stephen Porges. We're going to talk about some places where you can go today if you do want to incorporate some trauma-informed therapies, and we'll show you how they're implemented from my knowledge. And I've been through some of these therapies myself to explore them. A lot of CEOs reach out to me and say, hey, Could you go through our therapy and tell us what you think? It's not because I'm in spiritual anguish or anything like that, not in emotional agony, but it's literally because they want to get my opinion. They want my feedback on their stuff. Not like anything that I say has certainly changed the minds of Stephen Porges, and that's a long story in and of itself, but I'm certain that they've taken to heart some of the feedback that I've given them. Let's just say that. They've heard me. I know that they've heard me. If they'll change their ways, I don't necessarily know, but that's up to them, right? All you can do is try. 85% of life is just getting started, okay? All right. So first, what I want to do, just a quick recap of days 1 and day 2, so people are kind of up to speed. First and foremost, the general principle here is that trauma is a term that's thrown around a little bit too much by therapists who probably, if we follow the money, that's the term, it's a good, again, in life, if you can develop frames or lenses to see the world through, if you go, let's follow the money here a little bit and try to explore why things are the way they are. If you follow the money with trauma is a great thing from a financial perspective to attach to a client or to a patient to convince them that they are traumatized and that they have PTSD. They have post-traumatic stress disorder. And to frame it as, well, we're going to work on it by releasing it or uncovering it or working with the trauma. And as we know, from a therapeutic perspective, this is a process that can take many years and at great cost to the patient. So again, following the money, if we use that as a framing, a mental mechanism to understand the world better, I would encourage you to look at how the government works, look at how war works, look at how lots of things work. If you follow the money, you'll better understand why things have developed into the way that they have. So following the money basically says that if you convince a patient that they are traumatized, they're much more likely to be and feel stuck, to identify with the trauma, to take a lot longer to work through that trauma, and it's much more difficult to resolve trauma depending on how you look at it. So if you look at trauma as something that's this big Sasquatchian monster, this hydra that you cut off one head of the hydra of trauma and two heads grow out of the place where one was before, you'll never fix it, but somebody will certainly help you start slashing at the trauma. And so, at something like $135 per session to $250 per hour per session, once or twice per week for years, there's certainly a financial incentive to create frames, lenses upon which therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists can get your money relatively easy by convincing you that you are traumatized. So in the interest of, I don't think the main interest here is to save people money per se. I mean, I think that could be an added benefit. Or maybe just, spending your money in different more useful ways. I think you could still spend the same amount of money, but you could get like 100 times the results based on the framing that we're going to bring today and yesterday. So that was kind of day 1. Day 1 and day 2, we talked about PTBS, which is post-traumatic belief systems. PTBS is the concept, is the framing that what you really develop post-trauma is a belief system about your relationship in the world. So for instance, if you were assaulted, abused, molested as a child, you would, in the thing that manifests itself in the traditional view of a traumatized child is the belief system that was developed post-traumatically. Meaning, you see kids typically develop the sense of, I deserved it, I'm a bad kid, I don't deserve to live, I'm better off dead. So you see belief systems develop post-traumatically. So it's really post trauma, you develop a belief system. And also, it's not a mistake. It's not by accident that it's also BS can also stand for bullshit, which is you can certainly develop a lot of belief systems post traumatically that are complete and utter bullshit and rubbish. And the main difference between a person who, again, I'll use the example. You have two kids, two identical twins, exact same life path. Trauma happens at 3 or 4 years old. Twin A develops a path of, oh, I don't deserve to live. They develop a poor belief system. And then you have twin B, who develops an empowering belief system post-trauma. The kid who develops the bad belief system is going to have a relatively like a hard time with it. They would be considered the traumatized one. But child B would develop into this, wow, what a resilient kid. They really overcame so many odds, and they rose to their own level of personal empowerment or personal greatness, whatever that might be. And it's really not the trauma, because trauma does not guarantee the outcomes of a person. A traumatic experience it's not written in stone what outcomes will happen from that experience at all. There's just it's just not the case. Even if your trauma was, I got both of my arms and legs amputated because I stepped on a landmine, does not guarantee that same person, that same child who was arguably absolutely traumatized by the event, doesn't guarantee that they won't somehow develop something empowering about it. I've seen on stage a guy named Nicholas Santanastasio, who was born with one arm, no legs, and a stub, basically. I think he calls it that, a partially developed left arm. He, for all practical purposes, just by birth, I don't know what the circumstances of his birth were that he developed that way. Maybe an industrialized area that his parents lived in. I don't know. He was based out of, I think, Ohio of some sort. And so it's unfortunate what happened. But this kid is a motivational speaker who's gone on tours around the entire world, speaking to high schoolers, corporate executives. I mean, just crowds of people who are just absolutely blown away by this kid's energy, by his resolve. Yeah. So Laura, you do know him. Yeah, Nick Sanastasio, I believe. Let me just look him up. So you guys, I want to do him service. Nick Sanastasio. Nick Sanastasio. Okay, I'm Google foo failing. I'm so sorry. It was never easy for me to say his name. With no legs. What's the guy's? Huh. Okay. Well, I'll figure it out later. We'll get it. But this kid is incredible, but could easily have been considered to have like a very, traumatic life. But he didn't allow the belief systems to develop that would have demotivated him from doing some incredible stuff. And you don't have to let traumatic experiences do bad things to you either. Each one of you watching has that innate ability to reframe and to rethink and to re-engineer your own belief systems. And you can oftentimes do it instantaneously. And as well, yesterday I shared a resource called The Hour of Power, which is called Engaging the Parasympathetic System Through Affirmations. And as part of this Hour of Power, what I'm doing is I'm looking down at, there's a specific headset that you can get on Amazon for like, I believe, less than $25. You load one audio on here that's 20 minutes long. It's called the Hour of Power audio. It's an audio that I created with some inspiration, of course, and some music and guidance on getting into a grateful state, a state of gratitude, and then moving your physiology, changing your focus, your physiology, and your language. This 3-part you know, the 3-part triangle of your state, which is your physiology, your physical body, your state of mind, your just what language you're using essentially, and then your focus. What do you focus on? Do you focus on the good, empowering, or do you focus on the bad? Because what's available to you at any moment is everything that's great about your life and everything that's horrible about your life. You always have those two things available to you to focus on at any point in time. And I'm sure you know, you personally, I'm looking right at you. You know people, and hopefully you're not one of those people who has a tendency to jump into, this is so bad, oh my God, where it's difficult for you to go to what's the potential positive of this? Even if something bad happens, it is actually a muscle that you can stretch and get stronger to go like, well, on the positive side here, there could be something good, right? Like, for instance, lockdowns in 2020, what could be good about that? Well, lots of bad certainly happened because of COVID, of course, but maybe it offered some people the ability to stay inside more, to party less potentially, to have more introspection, to get into less trouble. I mean, there could be a lot of good that did come from the lockdowns for sure. But like I said, and some of you are going, no, Sterling, nothing at all good happened from COVID-19. Not an ounce of anything good happened. And like, you might be that person I was just referring to, who is, I don't know, incapable of looking at the positive, the potential positive that comes out of that. I hope you're not in that camp. I hope if you are in that camp of jumping to what you focus on being what's wrong, is a skill set that you can develop to see what's right in a situation. So again, that's all part of your PTBS, which is, that's why when you see people who are really, really negative, that's why you might be inclined to make the claim that, oh wow, that person must be really traumatized. But again, that's the whole trick here, is that by casting and throwing labels onto people like, oh, that person's traumatized, you're making a lot of mistakes in that. First mistake you're making is you're trying to mind read, and you are not a mind reader. And especially, it's like the whole thing with like television doctors trying to diagnose people that they've never met personally is very dangerous. You really don't want to, I promise you this, you do not want to live in a society where a doctor, a person of authority, can get on national television and make large claims about the general mental state and mental faculties and incentives and motivations of a person that they do not know and have never diagnosed in person or in any way, shape, or form, not as a patient. That's the kind of stuff that happened in like Soviet Russia, Maoist China. They'd be like, oh yeah, the doctor just assumes that this person is an anti-Maoist, an anti-communist, and therefore they're against the party, the will of the party, and then they should be imprisoned because, again, they read their mind. This is the kind of stuff of Maoism, of pretty insane levels of human viciousness. So again, if you catch yourself thinking about someone, wow, that person must be really traumatized, without you personally knowing, it's a very bad idea. You can also develop PTBS without really having much trauma to have gone through. Maybe somebody developed focus and language and physiology patterns because all the people around them were in fact traumatized. Those people around that core person all had bad belief systems and bad mental habits, and you're never that different from the people that you surround yourself with the most. So you could see someone have a language pattern that could be extremely negative, but you can't assume that that person in particular was traumatized. And also, what does that mean in the context of trauma? Because if trauma is this demonic energy that latches onto you because of you were abused as a child, what does that mean then if you have 5 of those people surrounding one child and that child grows up in that environment, but nobody did anything to that kid? What if a kid lives a perfect lifestyle, but all of its influences are from people who did legitimately have trauma that they never analyzed? They never looked at their belief systems that developed out of it. Every single one of those people hated their lives, all secretly and privately said to themselves, man, I wish I were dead. I deserved all that happened to me. I must have been a really bad person in my past life. I guess I'm just not deserving of a good life. That's going to manifest itself in their energy, their vibe, and really in everything. So really not a good idea to assume about another person their level of trauma or not. I think it's a sick thing to do to another person, is to assume that you can read their mind or deduce their entire life history. I'm sure you wouldn't want that done about you, and it's not nice to do to other people. So don't do it. Just don't. It's a loser type of thing to do, to assume like, oh wow, that person must be very traumatized. You just don't know. And just because somebody engages or acts a way that you don't personally like doesn't mean that automatically that they're a bad person or that they're traumatized or even that they have bad belief systems. It just might mean that they think differently than you. So we want to be obviously very careful about this. And also, again, looking at another person and assuming the worst might be a belief system that you have that you need to work on more than that person needs to change. And oftentimes, as we all know, it's far more effective to work on yourself and analyze yourself first before you go out in the world thinking, ha ha ha, I know better than everybody else, and I'm going to fix these people, or I'm going to do better than them, or whatever you might be thinking. So it's very important to really analyze a lot more than you think is at stake. So like I said, yesterday we did recommend the Hour of Power, which is called the parasympathetic activator. I believe I might have the link to it again here on my computer. I'm going to try to open up my notes. Give me a second. And yeah, here we go. So I'm going to put that in the chat just one more time, just so you guys can have that. It's called Engaging the Parasympathetic State with the Hour of Power, and the link is right there. I'm going to also drop it in the chat for y'all on YouTube. Looks like we got some, really good view time on YouTube as well. That's really cool. Thanks. I would just want to take a moment to thank everybody who's been tuning into these videos. I, do appreciate not just talking into the void. So anyway, but I am getting better at this too. So that is fun. So anyway, that's a long recap of what we're talking about here, but let's look at where this process of trauma release has gone maybe even too far. So I believe that today the psychedelic therapy industry is a manifestation of the I need to release all of my trauma before I can live a good life idea. I don't agree with that at all. You can absolutely live your best life without first having to do trauma release therapy or anything like that. In fact, there are lots of people around the world who have had way more traumatic lives than you, who are living their best lives, and they've never once stepped into a therapist's office, and they've certainly never been on a Zoom call with a psychiatrist or anything like that. So there are people out there who are doing just fine, who lived through war zones. So, again, we're very privileged here in the West to be able to afford trauma therapy and all that kind of stuff. So, but I believe that when people do psychedelic drugs like ayahuasca or DMT or magic mushrooms or maybe even ketamine potentially, is that they feel as if they're releasing trauma, but short of modifying their own belief system in that experience, they're never going to really experience the full relief from the PTBS that they developed post-traumatically, the belief systems that they developed post-traumatically. Because bad belief systems don't always develop the moment of the trauma. Those can often take days, weeks, months, and years to develop afterwards, right? That is why certain therapists will ask you, well, so what did that mean to you when that happened? What does that mean to you is a way of inferring or eliciting what beliefs did you potentially create post-traumatically. And I think that some of the best ways to change a belief are first, well, there's lots of ways. One way is to affirm to yourself that you control what you believe, first and foremost. Can we all agree on that? Can we all agree that ultimately, since what's happening in your brain is under your control, is that you do control what you believe? If you guys agree with me, I want you to type yes in the chat, ideally a capital YES with an exclamation point at the end if you really want to go above and beyond. So my question to you is, do you control what you believe? Answer in the chat. Do you control what you believe? Is either a yes or a no. I think you know the answer that I'm looking for, but I want to hear it from you guys here in the chat. Okay, great. So Laura, we have a yes. Awesome. We have a yes. Yes is the correct answer. You do control what you believe. Everything that happens in your belief system is strictly under your own control. That gives you the ability to reject bullshit beliefs that other people have tried to implant into your own mind by exposure, by time spent around them. So you control what you believe. Is there anyone else that controls what you believe? What do you think is the answer to that? Is there anyone else other than you that controls what you believe? No. I want you to write an NO in the chat. Okay? Let's get some engagement here, right? So I see you guys watching. I see all of you watching here. Okay, good. Charlene, TK, Beth, who wherever you are, get that in the chat, right? So can anyone else make you believe anything? No. That's very true. Nobody else can make you believe anything. Nobody else can convert you to something that you aren't willing to become, okay? So all that's required in this, what we would traditionally consider a traumatic modification process, is to first and foremost is to get really resolute, to get really resolved in your body and your mind and your soul and your heart and your spirit, that you strictly control what you believe, that everything that happens in between your two ears is entirely of your own design and your responsibility. Nobody else can change you. You can change you. And now let me ask you another no answer question. If somebody's told you some bullshit your entire life, do you have to believe them? Yes or no? I'll ask you again, and I want you to write the answer here. If somebody told you something your entire life, either you telling yourself or a parent telling you some bullshit your whole life, do you have to believe them? Yes or no? Write the answer in the chat. If somebody else told you, same question, if somebody told you some bullshit every single day for your entire life, do you have to believe them? Yes or no? Lori, great. Love it. You get extra bonus points for today. I love this participation. Again, I encourage y'all. I know we've got more people than Lori watching. So type in the chat. Get engaged here, right? This is, if you interact, this process will become innate. If you do the hour of power, this process will become committed, guaranteed, scheduled, and you'll never really have to struggle with these bad beliefs that you think you have, okay? So if somebody told you some bullshit your entire life, do you have to believe them, yes or no? The answer is no. Now, the last question I'll have that you have to answer honestly is, when can you change? When is it possible for you to change these beliefs that you may still have? When is it possible? Is it now or is it never? Is it, first and foremost, we know that it is possible, and it is your responsibility to control what you believe, okay? first and foremost. But let me ask you, when can you change? Lori with a resounding now. Good. That's perfect. Lori with a now. Okay? When can you change? And you say in your head, you go, now. I can change right now. Who controls what you believe? I do. Can anyone else make you believe anything? No. When can you change? Now. This is all the affirmations that you need to start pulling out these bad beliefs. Oftentimes, you don't even have to identify the bad beliefs because your brain is like a really incredible tool. And you know how things have a metaphorical meaning? You know how things have this metaphorical meaning to them where you kind of have like a secret that you know is inside of your brain that you don't want other people to know about? Bad beliefs are like a little tiny secret that you hold. Bad, debilitating beliefs, post-traumatic belief systems that happen from trauma that keep you in the cycle of thinking that you're bad or wrong or that you deserved it or whatever. That's trauma. That's a post-traumatic belief system, not trauma itself. Trauma isn't a traumatic event happens. A memory is a memory. And it's traumatic if you develop a post-traumatic belief system that's incredibly debilitating. And so all you need to do in getting your neurology is that you can change right now, that nobody else can control what you believe, that it's possible to change your beliefs at any time, especially right now. That's the main thing you need to know, okay? Good. Awesome, Lori, getting a lot of practice. That's perfect. Now, you guys want the fix for this? Now that you've identified in your brain, just by saying those, you've already created a line in the sand in your brain. Good beliefs and bad beliefs. You know what a bad belief is. I don't even have to give you examples. I've already given you multiple examples already. You know enough now. You have what's in you right now to release bad beliefs. Let's do it right now. We're already here. We're already doing this. So pay attention, okay? So here's what you do. I want you to imagine, and you can even use your own hand, I want you to imagine reaching inside of your own body and grabbing those limiting beliefs and pulling them like you're yanking them out of your throat, pulling them out of your body, binding them up into a little ball like a piece of paper, and then throwing them into a big bonfire right in front of you and seeing them burn up, burning the bad beliefs in a fire, burning debilitating beliefs that don't serve you anymore, burn them in the fire. Feel yourself free from those bad beliefs. And then lastly, right, you feel that? Now, as you're doing this pulling out, one thing that you should be feeling is a little bit nauseous. You should feel nausea from that process because this is why this video series is called Trauma in the Vagus Nerve, is because that's where it resides. Your vagus nerve is a language center. Most people will never tell you this, but your vagus nerve controls a large part of your vocabulary, and your belief systems are in your vocabulary. There's certain orientations of words and patterns in your vagus nerve. So when you're removing code, programming, language, patterns from your vagus nerve, you are kind of yanking things out of your vagus nerve. Now, depending on how strong or how weak your vagus nerve is, it may feel a little bit different. But generally speaking, the real therapeutic process of pulling a bad belief is yanking it up from your stomach, up through your chest, up through your throat, and pulling it out of your mouth like you're pulling some kind of a worm or a snake or some kind of an energy out of your mouth, balling it up into your hands, grabbing it, and then literally chucking it with full force, chucking it into a big imaginary fire. That is actually, psychologically speaking, more in tune with what any type of trauma release process actually is. That is actually, out of all the years of research that I've done and doing 6 years now in coaching, 6 years in personal transformational coaching using vagus nerve stimulation with ultrasound, is that out of all the methods that have ever come across my metric, all the clients that I work with have spent thousands and thousands, sometimes 10, sometimes $100,000 in money prior to ever having a communication with me. And I get to hear, what did you do before for treatment for the issues that you're having? So many of them, like, I did hypnosis, I did trauma therapy, I did trauma release, I did psychedelic drugs. None of them got me the kinds of results that I got from that than what I got in your program. And the difference is because we approach this as in a different way. I have zero incentive to keep a client sicker longer than they need to be. I have zero incentive to slow down the process for a client if they have these post-traumatic belief systems. It does not serve me. It does not serve my business. I have no financial incentive to keep someone constantly coming back to my, therapist couch every week, paying me tons of money to deal with their trauma in a talk therapy context, right? I don't think that a therapist would ever, I've never heard of a therapist have you reach inside and rip out trauma out of your body in that physical way. And especially not with the context of it being in your vagus nerve. And especially not with the formulation that if you really want to do it, you got to do it consistently. You got to have a practice built around it. Like Hour of Power, the video that we shared earlier, the audio program, which is free to download. You can get it and go watch it today. Involves some of these processes of getting yourself into a state of gratitude and then pulling out. You're pulling out bad beliefs. That's the process. It's not releasing trauma. It's pulling out bad beliefs. And in the space there, then you can do pretty much anything you want. Then the sky is the limit. And the only way, you don't then just sit down and, well, what are my new beliefs? Because you're raw from that. You need to put yourself into a state of gratitude, of appreciation, to appreciate, like, wow, it's amazing that we have access to so much information these days. Did you know that you can go read a book on pretty much any subject? You have the benefit of millions of people who've sat down and wrote books that you can go rent or read or buy at any time to learn about any subject that's known to humankind. Books that you did not write. You can read books that you did not write. You take medicines that you did not create. You drive on streets that you did not pave. We are so blessed to live in this time in human history, to live in this time in place right now. So you got to get yourself into a nice gratitude type of state. Then what happens is that those new belief systems start to flow. So there's a process to this, but this kind of stuff can happen. This is instantaneous transformation. This is, let's go from here to there incredibly quickly. That's the missing component in a lot of these therapies. Now, that's the methodology, and that's it. Again, who controls what you believe? I control what I believe. Can anyone else make me believe anything? Fuck no, they can't. When is it time to change? Right now, right? Yeah? So that's the first affirmation you got to get in your body. If you don't believe, if you deny your claim to your own belief systems, you are so fucked. If you walk around thinking, you know what? I can't change how I think. I can't change what I believe. I can't modify any way, shape, or form what I believe about myself. If you believe that, first of all, that's a belief that can be changed, first of all. But if you believe anything past that about you not having the responsibility for what you believe or any of that stuff, you are in deep trouble. You are in deep doo-doo, sports fans. It's not a good place to be. And I would highly recommend that should be the belief that you change. That's probably a post-traumatic belief system. Now, I can use stuff like that because I'm giving you the full formula of what is trauma, what is a traumatic memory giving you. It's giving you a post-traumatic belief system, and a post-traumatic belief system can feel good. And that's the ironic thing. You can develop belief systems that validate you on a deep level, even though they can be strictly debilitating. And that's possible. Raise your hand if you know someone like that. You know someone in your life. You've met someone in your life. Raise your hand, nod your head. If you've met a human being whose belief systems, as negative and as debilitating as they obviously are, still clearly derive some kind of comfort or some kind of certainty or you know what? I told you so. See, I told you that I have bad karmic debt, and that's why I was abused as a child. See, I told you this is just how my life is. I know so many people. I've met so many people in my lifetime who have weird, skewed, distorted beliefs just like that. And I would highly recommend that you do not allow that kind of belief system to infect your life. It's not a good thing. Okay? So, as you pull a belief system out, you should feel nauseous. You should feel like this. And now it's funny, on the psychedelic front, when people take things like ayahuasca or kambo or frog medicine or, any kind of psychedelics or ketamine, a lot of the times what you'll notice in the therapeutic context, guess what they all feel? They all feel nauseous. One of the first things you do if you take iboga or ibogaine, what is it? Dimethyltryptamine, LSD, mushrooms, any type of psychedelic compound. A lot of them will make you vomit. A lot of them will make you really, really sick, and that's an important part of the therapeutic process. Do you see a connection there? Nod your head if you're like, huh. Sterling just said that the best therapies that involve belief breaking always involve pulling out of your mouth bad beliefs, and you should and you will feel like you're going to vomit, energetically doing it. But because people so love their talismans, their little trinkets, their little things that they can hang on to, is that the only way that they're willing to allow themselves to feel that nasty, sick feeling is that they have to go down to Peru to get themselves sick by taking psychedelics. So again, it's the trinket-obsessed world that we live in where you're like, well, certainly, I mean, you couldn't just normally do this. I guess some trauma is so bad that you have to take ayahuasca. You have to do a shamanic experience. Some people, look, if that's what you want to do with your time, with your money, I'm not judging anybody for doing that kind of stuff. Certainly I've had my fair share of encounters with the numinous in that way. So no judgment, but it certainly is not the best way. It's certainly it's actually a very dangerous way to do it, because on the other side of psychedelics can be even like things like psychosis, more depression. You can even, did you guys know that after you take psychedelics, you could actually develop trauma from it? You can develop pretty substantially horrific belief systems. I've seen people do psychedelics and develop traumatic belief systems on the tail end of it, saying that they're doomed by Satan from the fourth dimension, and that they're destined to die within the next couple of days. I've seen people post traumatically create belief systems from psychedelics. So again, don't just strap yourself into a rocket and blast off, right? I don't think that's a smart idea. But anyway, so that's my thoughts on psychedelics and trauma release therapy. I think they're completely unrelated things. They're related, but you can so misuse them. And then lastly, what I want to share is just, where are people doing this potentially right? Like, where are you better off doing therapeutic things here, right? When we talk about trauma release, where are people doing it right? The people who are doing it the best would be like Peter Levine, who talks about, releasing the tiger within. He talks about trauma release practices. Bessel van der Kolk, he's in Netherlands. He's from the Netherlands, and he's a trauma-informed therapist. And he's got a great book called The Body Keeps the Score. If you haven't heard of that book, go definitely check it out. Also, Gabor Mate, who talks about, the body. Was it The Body Keeps the Score? No, he talks about, in the realm of the hungry ghosts, or when the body says no. He's got a couple of really good books on trauma and what he's observed with trauma, especially. Again, belief systems do a lot to people. Belief systems are the main thing belief systems are the exact precise manifestation of trauma, and that's the thing that you need to modify. That's the thing that you need to address. You don't address trauma directly. There's no such thing as a forget me not serum at this point in time. And even if you could forget something, it doesn't mean it's going to change the beliefs. You guys follow that? I had Jody asked a question just on day one. She said, well, what if I feel like there was a trauma, but I don't remember the exact nature of it? And I'd say, well, what you're playing out day to day are your belief systems, like a record. And it wouldn't matter if I completely wiped away that section of your brain. What remains is the language. What remains are the belief systems that you developed. The PTBS is what remains. So it literally doesn't matter if you do past life regression and look at like, wow, when I was a old queen, my head was cut off, and that's why my neck hurts so much. You don't need. Also, that sounds like a pretty bizarre belief system anyway. But you don't need to remember the trauma in order to still benefit from what I'm saying, which is go after the belief systems directly, not the trauma, not the memory of an event that happened that was traumatic. You don't have to go. You would just be doing it in the wrong way. So be very careful into how you approach it. But anyway, going back to the people who are doing it right, Peter Levine, Bessel van der Kolk, Gabor Mate, and I would say Stephen Porges in the context that his therapies are trauma-informed, and I think they have a better sense of trauma than just the average therapist. And I think that they do want to release things, but still, I don't think that they've got it fully. I think what we're looking at here is generally what I'm speaking of is is the effective process. Now, for those who are in some way considering joining my program in terms of phase 1 or phase 2, right behind me is a VR headset. Now, everybody who adds the VR headset, it's a small nominal fee, basically just covers the cost of the VR. Inside of that is the full traumatic release process, the one where I'm going to be yelling at you, who controls what you believe? And you're going to go, I control what I believe. And I'm going to say, when do you control what you believe? And you're going to say, now. When? Now. Then reach inside and imagine ripping out any limiting beliefs in your life and then burning them in the fire. Feel yourself free from them. Imagine ripping them out and then celebrating your freedom. 1, 2, 3, go. And then you're going to go, yeah, like this. And you're going to get up off of your seat and you're going to start yelling and making your move and pounding your chest. And honestly, the VR, nothing comes close to a traumatic release process. And I've actually, I've had clients of mine who are like top in their field, trauma release therapists. They can't even compete with the VR. The stuff that I'm able to do with a virtual reality headset with my clients is next level. So again, I do hope that some of you do consider coming aboard our phase 1 or phase 2 program. I'm going to drop the link right there for those who are watching here on Facebook, and then also, as well on chat. Certainly, I always encourage folks to join, as well, to schedule a call with me, schedule a call with the team. We have a couple calls coming up this week as well for people who are interested in joining our program. So you're always more than welcome to get on the phone to understand what it is exactly that we do. All that's really in that phase 1 program. We have a lot of people who just go to phase 1 right there in the link. They watch the videos, they watch the testimonials, they say, wow, this is pretty incredible. And then they click the join now button and they're in the program. It's not that expensive to join our program. And to get access to the VR, I mean, next level stuff. So, again, if you've been trying this for a long time and you're just like, I don't feel like I'm getting it yet, I don't feel like I'm there yet, and you want to join like a revolutionary type of program that's going to help you do vagus nerve stimulation with ultrasound, potentially add the VR into your program, do neck strengthening, nutrition, mindset support, hour of power, ultra priming, and get one-to-one direct coaching from me and my team. Get access to our full script account, which gets you 35% off all supplements. So you could save, some people could save all of the money they spend on the program just by the amount that they save from our full script account. So that's a pretty compelling reason to join as well, because we have a doctor that works in our program that mans our full script account. And I decided a long time ago, I'm not going to make any money from selling freaking pills to people. They should get it for the best price possible, 35% off retail. We oftentimes save people hundreds of dollars in their first week of the program because you can buy anything that you normally buy through FullScript, but with our account, it's 35% off, and I take 0% of anything that you get. A lot of people who have doctors with the FullScript account, they're only getting like 10%. Did you know that your doctor who's prescribing the $300 of supplements is taking 35% of a cut of what you spend through FullScript, which I think is kind of ridiculous. Makes me wonder why every time I talk to that one doctor, my FullScript card is $250 worth of stuff that I probably won't ever need. So again, we'll pass the savings on to you. That's one, I think, huge reason to join the program. Besides, you get the ultrasound. You can have access to the VR. You can strengthen your neck, get rid of neck pain, get mindset support, get scheduling support for your day. We do a weekly call every single day. We do a private weekly call for we do a daily call every Monday through Friday with all clients. So you'll get tons of support. If support is one thing that you want and you want people to talk to and you want help in this journey, again, your life is waiting for you. If you have bad belief systems, we can break them the fuck down. We can replace them with really good stuff. We can make you a very effective person. But again, the first step, just click that link, watch the video. I'll explain in that video in very frank terms, what is the phase 1 coaching program? What is that exactly? How do we use ultrasound to stimulate the vagus nerve? Not just in the neck, but also on the spleen, the sternum, the sacrum, the pancreas, the colon, the kidneys. There's lots of places that you can stimulate the vagus nerve that you aren't just going to find, anywhere else. That's just only in our program. So yeah. And great, Bevan, I see your comment here just came through. Bevan writes, I need to change my belief systems for sure. Definitely. And, again, your belief systems will change if you rip out the limiting ones first. Just a fact. I would just say, again, this is why people get so stuck on trauma, because they're focused on the trauma. They're not focused on the actual place that gets you the results, which is getting rid of bad belief systems that don't empower you, that disempower you, and your brain will create new ones. In the absence of a bad belief and in the presence of good people, supportive people, smart people, loving people, compassionate people, joyful people, the new belief systems will just seep in naturally. Because oftentimes the reason we develop bad beliefs is really because we were around people who had bad beliefs themselves. So just because you weren't physically traumatized doesn't mean that you weren't raised by highly traumatized people. And we got to undo some of that damage as well. So, again, everything that I've showed you in this video, I've given you the step-by-step process. Affirm your ability to control your beliefs, that you can do it right now. Yank them out of your body. Pull them out of your body, out of your mouth. Make yourself dry heave if you have to. Like that. Like that. If that's not happening, you're not digging deep enough. You need to like that. You guys might think I'm totally crazy right now, but I'm not kidding you. If that is not happening, no trauma release has happened. If you aren't feeling like my vagus nerve is activated from that, sorry, you haven't pulled out any limiting beliefs at all. You're not there yet. And then you pull them out, you throw them in the fire, you visually see them burning, and then you celebrate your freedom from bad beliefs. Because honestly, look, if somebody came to me for nutritional health, some of the first things I do in my program is I look at just hey, what are you eating that you could remove that could get you massive changes? Oh, you're sneaking a Twinkie every morning. You're eating bonbons every time you go to the gas station. You're drinking 3 liters of soda every day. You could be eating a normal diet. If you just removed the 3 liters of soda, you're probably going to be in a good place. You're probably going to be in a really good place. So oftentimes, yeah, Lori, exactly. It's true. You do feel like vomiting. Yes, exactly. That has to be a part of the process. If you don't have that or nauseous feeling from removing and ripping out, it's not releasing. Bad beliefs do not want to just go out into the world and float around. They are latching onto you. They are toxic. They are looking for a home. You are that home. So you are not going to just you have to pull them out of your body, and you have to pull them out of your vagus nerve. And anytime you pull something out of your vagus nerve like that, you're going to have that reaction, that, spit. I don't think you really need to puke unless you're doing like ayahuasca, but you don't actually need to puke. You might puke once, maybe, but I've never seen anybody actually puke from this practice. It just depends, but it will heal you. It's very healing. It's almost immediate. You feel it. I've seen people change so substantially from this type of work. It's amazing. It is literally amazing. And then I go online and I see all these trauma therapists. We're gonna help you release your trauma. We're gonna focus on the trauma. We're gonna dig it out of you. It's like, no, you're not. You're gonna get somebody locked into this, like, oh, I just need one more session and then I'm ready to go. Just one more trauma release, one more combo session, one more ayahuasca trip to Peru, then I'm gonna be ready to take on my life. No, it doesn't work like that. Your life doesn't sit around waiting for you to release all of your trauma. Just not how it works. So anyway, I hope to see some people clicking on that link for the phase 1 coaching program. But that'll do it for day number 3. I'm going to end it on YouTube here. So thanks on YouTube.